Hey everyone, welcome back to the program. This is Stuart Victor Echo 9 Charlie Foxtrot, and this guy sitting next to me is none other than, I'm Greg, KJ60R. Greg?
I'm virtually sitting next to you. I wish I was, then we'd be drinking a beer, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning in California.
I have my water on the go here.
Yeah, I'm doing Gatorade. So, I mean, it's just not as much fun as if we were, having a happy hour out there.
It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that's good enough for me.
It is good enough for you, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning for me.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yes, it is.
That's what the old saying is. Anyway, here today we're gathered here today to have a discussion on solar cycle 25, and now that we're going into the decline, we had the apex a little while ago. Some say a year ago, 6 months. Anyway, but within the last 6 to 18 months, we experienced the apex of solar cycle 25, and now we're on the decline to the bottom of the solar cycle again. And Greg, no argument whatsoever. The bands have been just lousy the last week. And
it's a preview. It's a teaser, getting you ready, emotionally prepared.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about what can portable operators do today to prepare for that, because we don't want to lose the fun of our parks on the air, or I even learned about a new program today, towers on the air. So
there's all kinds of on the air programs. I haven't heard of that.
They're brand new group out of the Czech Republic started. So
towers on the air.
I saw it on the cluster yesterday, and then I got my monthly copy of SWR magazine, and there was a full feature article in there about them. And then I reached out to Sebastian about Ham 2K Polo, and he mentioned that they're already in Ham 2K Polo. So
wow, so I've never heard of it. I'm going to have to look it up after this little interview.
www.tota.com.
Tota.
Not to be confused with Lota or Pota or Pota
or all the other Odas. Like I said, there's a lot of Odas. I mean, I've heard of Bridges on the air.
I never heard of that one.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of on the airs.
You know what? It's only more places to go play portable ham radio.
I guess so. I don't know.
Anyway, so
let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get rocking and rolling here. So solar cycle 25 is on the way out. The decline is starting. What are you seeing on the West Coast compared to what I'm seeing on the East Coast?
Same.
Right now, this afternoon, it's probably a summer, as we're going into the summer, it happens. Yeah. The summer doldrums, I call it.
That's right.
The bands really start to come alive around dinner time, which is about 5 o'clock my time.
That's right.
So either you get out first thing in the morning, because Europe is usually hopping first thing in the morning to about 10 o'clock. Australia,
that's your time.
Australia is coming in at that time. And then from about 10 o'clock in the morning to about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you might as well go play golf.
Which I do.
There you go. So, because there's not a lot of ham radio to be done because the summer.
Well, there is. It's just a different kind of ham radio, Stu. We just have to change our mindset. We have to think about it differently. It's still a lot of fun. It's a different kind of geek ham radio fun.
Very true.
And that's why we're here to talk about and reinforce that message. Don't go away for the next 5 years. Don't go away. There's going to be a lot of fun. It's just a different kind.
But what I really wanted to zero in on is now it's even more important to have the right systems and the right technologies in place. And I wanted to kind of zero back in on antenna efficiency.
Yeah, that's a big one.
A big thing, Gil. Because I went out on 2 weeks ago on a Saturday afternoon, it was a Sunday afternoon, and I did the Marauder video to come soon. The bands are absolutely brutal, but I still managed 100 and so QSOs that day.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and I went out on the weekend with a Radio Oddity HF010 just to compare how that would work with the against other system. Anyway, I did okay, 165, but that was right in the middle of the day, right? Yeah. And I knew I wasn't going to put out the 400 or 500 numbers that I'm used to. So
exactly. You got to reset your expectations, Stu.
Things are a changing, as they say.
They are. But part of what we're experiencing now, this is now May of 2026, because people may be watching this in the future, of course, our future, their present. There are summer doldrums, and those are real. I mean, the 10 meter and 12 meter bands, even at the top of the cycle, it's tough during the summer because of all the intense, the ionization and the F layers get more porous, so it's more difficult. It lowers the MUF. And so, things are different. But but you still have lots of fun. You still have the other bands. You still have different modes to play with, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So what are you seeing on the West Coast?
It's the same. It's the same thing, Stu. It's the same thing. You have to be much more precise about the kinds of bands you want to focus on, the kinds of modes. I've reset my expectations. I never have done hundreds, like 500 contacts like you have, but I've done a couple hundred, but I'm resetting my expectations. It's a lower number of contacts. It's a different kind of contact, less DX. Now here on the West Coast, my DX is more Asia and not so much Europe, where you got a lot of Europe. You know, it's very easy for you to get there. But for us, it's a little bit different, but you still have a lot of fun because you're out there, you're talking to other hams, whether you're doing sideband or CW or even digital. You're talking to other hams, you're interacting, you're still using the technology that you love to use, your radio, you're still going out portable and getting fresh air and exploring new places. It's still there. It's just a different kind of fun, and you have to reset your expectation. Now, I've lived through 2 downturns in the cycle since I got my ham radio license. How about you? Have you lived through any?
Well, I've been licensed, 35 years, so probably this is my 3rd or 4th rodeo now.
Okay, so there you go. So you remember, of course, you had periods of inactivity.
Correct.
Maybe you went inactive during your...
Maybe. I know I came back in and the bands were hopping, so...
So, you know, the last one was during the COVID. The last one, 2020, was during COVID. Ironically, that's when a lot of hams got into ham radio for the first time because, you know, they were looking for things to do around the house and they had this interest in ham radio and thought, I'll just study for my license. And so I remember those folks have never really known what it's like to be at the bottom of the cycle because they started as the cycle was coming up. They're going to be in for a little treat over the next few years.
It's going to make QRP operators and I'll call it the throw a wire in a tree guys. They're probably going to be the ones that are going to experience the most frustration. And those who have a little bit more power, maybe a better antenna system, we'll see some hiccups, but they'll weather it better.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, even with QRP, you can still have a lot of fun, and we can talk about that. Shall we start showing some of these slides so we can structure some of this dialogue?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's do that.
All right. So I created a few slides for Stu and I because Stu and I have a tendency we love to talk, right, Stu?
Of course.
And we get off on tangents all the time, like beer and everything else.
Yeah, all the time.
All right, let's talk about this, Stu. This is solar cycle 25. That's the one we're in. And this is an amazing phenomenon. If you look down here first, if you can see this at the bottom of the slide, bottom of the chart, you can see all these cycles that have come before us back since 1750. So this is a regular phenomenon. This 11-year cycle is a regular phenomenon, and it's always been part of radio amateurs' challenge and opportunity. And you can see we peaked, according to NASA, we peaked in October of 2024. October of 2024 was the peak. And you can see here's COVID back here, 2021. You can see this is when a lot of new hams came in, and this is all they've ever experienced. Kind of like the stock market going up. Wow, look at all this money I'm making. Look at all these contacts I'm getting. It's fantastic. All I have to do is put up an inefficient antenna and I get pile up. Isn't life grand? Wow. Oh, it's getting a little tougher. Oh, and here we are in May of 2026. And the good news is we have another couple years, but right now we're experiencing what we experienced back in 2022 at those levels of a solar flux and sunspots. So as Stu mentioned, we're on that downward course, and you've got a lot of time before we get to, it looks like it's going to bottom somewhere in late 2030. Stu will only be a year older by then. You know, he's the ever young kind of guy. But those of us, the rest of us, that's about 5 years from now. Yeah, life's going to be different on ham radio, but you have all this time to enjoy it. And even down here, you're going to have some time, different kinds of fun to play with ham radio.
So Greg, let me interject with a comment here to keep it engaging between us, right? So for those new hams that have no idea what we're showing here, so as Greg mentioned, these solar cycles last approximately 11 years and they're reoccurring. So they always, look at the timeline, 2020 to 2031, 11-year cycle, and and we're in the 25th evolution of that cycle dating back to 1750. So
that we've recorded. There were cycles forever.
Of course.
But we didn't start recording these or figuring them out until 1750.
Of course. So this is just for you new hams out there. This is something that evolves every 11 years, a solar cycle. For some of you that are new, as Greg said, you've only really experienced a good stock market. It's going to it's going to get pretty bumpy, and we're not going to see the record contest scores or record POTA outings for a few years to come.
Yeah, I mean, we still have good times ahead, but we're talking like in 3 years or so, you're really going to begin to notice it, and things are going to change. But it's okay. It's okay. We'll still have lots of fun. It's just a different kind of fun.
Absolutely.
In fact, let's talk about that.
I mentioned, Greg, in another video that the importance of multi-mode operations, not just sticking to SSB, but SSB plus digital, SSB plus CW. Because sometimes when SSB is closed, digital is open.
Yeah. And we'll talk about platforms, because efficiency, not only in terms of antennas, but in terms of platform, is very important. And digital, whether you like it or you hate it, it's the most efficient platform out there. CW comes close, but digital is the most efficient. So let's talk about this mindset shift. This is basically what we like to say, easy DX we've had for a long time, especially you, Stu. You are really good at getting DX, but now it's earned DX. You have to go from just throwing your wire up there and making all these great DX contacts to, man, I really have to look for it. I've got to target it. I've got to be much more efficient at how I operate.
Not only in that, Greg, but also understanding the times, because if you want, I love that terminology, earn DX, because that's what I talk about. Salty Walt talks about it as well.
Yep.
You always find Walt out at 6 o'clock in the morning on the beach. That's when he knows that the Australia DX that he wants to get is available to him, and he can work Australia from his beach with a 20 watt. Well, he was working 20 watts with a vertical. That may change next year, but may have to go to 100 watts in a vertical. But that is, I love that terminology, earn DX. It's very, very important, because not a lot of parks on the air operators I would put in the DXer bucket, right? They're very much, casual. They want to talk to Greg in California or Bob in New Jersey. And they're totally cool with that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But for the DXer out there, you're gonna start changing your approach a little bit.
Yeah, you do. And it's okay. That's just the different game we play. And it's another way to expand your skill set. Like we say, it's a very unique operating environment, but you have to be much more adaptable than you used to. You got to develop new skills, and you have to come up with a new strategy, a new daily routine. And we'll talk about that. And I also like to say, it was so easy when the cycle was at its peak. You just kind of push some power out there, 100 watts, even 10 watts, and you make lots of contacts, you get pileups. But now it's more precision. You got to focus more on, as you said, certain times of the day, certain bands, certain modes to really be effective at the bottom of the cycle. But this is really healthy. This is good. This is expanding your skill set. It's not going to be as easy as it used to be, but it's still going to be a lot of fun. And finally, the way I like to call it is, a lot of us, and you kind of implied it on POTA, and I do the same thing, casual trolling, right? You kind of just get out there, you have some fun, you're going to make plenty of contact, you'll easily make your 10. And so you be very casual about it. But now you have to really get much more targeted. You have to think about, if I'm going to do portable ops, I got to pick the right band, I got to pick the right time of day, and most importantly, the right kind of antenna, because that makes huge difference.
Absolutely. Sure does. The right antenna can make or break an activation.
So what's happening? I mean, let's talk about this. First of all, you and I, neither of us are ionospheric experts, but we do know that the ionosphere changes because the sunspot numbers start to decline. The solar flux, which is what we live for, because that really gives us that amazing propagation, the ionization, is reduced. And when the ionization weakens, what happens is the F layer, the F1 and the F2 layer during the day, is what we depend on for DX, becomes much more porous, much less densely packed, so that when you send signals up to the F layers for refraction for your great DX, sometimes they go straight through. Sometimes the maximum usable frequency goes way down, and all of a sudden you start losing 10, 12, and you and I, our favorite band, we agree, is 15 meters. Even 15 meters, our beloved band, Stu, starts to weaken. What are we going to do?
Well, we're going to have to look at 20 meters, I think. As much as it pains me to say that.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, 20 meters and also 40 meters, but we'll talk about that. But there is an upside to all of this. There's less solar disturbances. So, you don't have the solar flares, the solar storms that you used to have because of all the horrendous number of sunspots. So the bands are a little quieter, but they're also quieter because there's less contacts on there too.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's one observation I recently came across. So I've been going out on the weekends now and testing different antennas. I've done your Marauder. I'm actually going to be building the Challenger this week to take out next weekend.
Outstanding.
I did the Radioddity. I made the 4-wave, that ones that the guys are, the Eagle One knockoff. I made one of those, and I got out to my favorite parks, Greg, and I plugged in my FTDX10 because I bought myself a second FTDX10.
Of course you did.
And I went, man, the bands are like really, really quiet.
Yeah.
To the point where I didn't even have to turn on the DNR or the noise blanker. It was just not even required.
Fantastic.
I'm thinking, have I done something wrong? Like, is this radio working?
Yeah, right.
And it was just, and even here at the house, now that I got my solar system fixed, thank goodness my solar's fixed.
Yeah.
I don't even have to have the noise blanker on during the day, and sometimes I can turn off the DNR.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Now I got the hex beam, so that picks up a lot more noise than say other, gain, any antennas without any real gain on them.
Well, your hex beam though, that's horizontally polarized.
It is, but it's still, since it's directional, if I turn in an area where there's a little bit of noise coming, I pick up that noise, especially if it's especially if it's electronic noise from across town, right? I'll sometimes pick that up, but it's been abnormally quiet, which is, I said, God, is this gear even working?
Yeah, right. Well, like I said, that is the upside. That is the upside, because you do have less noise, but like I said, you also have less contacts as well. But that's okay. It's just, like I said, it's a different emphasis. It's a different target focus. And speaking of focus, the low bands, Stu, it's the low bands. And instead of doing a lot of daytime, you may be doing a lot more nighttime, because whether you like it or not, 20 meters during the day and 40 meters at night, those are the workhorse bands. And of course, if everyone else knows that, what's going to happen on the band?
Oh, they get crowded.
Really crowded.
Yeah.
Lots of QRM. But it's just like a contest weekend. It's good practice. It's good for you to work in between all the different stations, and you can still have contacts.
And I'm sure you, being the smart guy that you are totally aware of this, that there's a certain part of the 20 meter and the 40 meter spectrum that American operators are not allowed to go to. So
that's not fair.
I sit down on 14.143 and I call CQDX, and I don't have to worry about, especially in the general portion of the band, being crowded in there. And right. I mean, you're right. Even this time of year, especially because in the summertime, I do a lot more evening and nighttime activations, because 20 meters is generally open to Europe in the evening, and 40 meters, when the conditions are right, is great. And again, for the American folks out there, if you want to work DX on 40 meters, you got to get below 7,200 if you want IRU region 1. Now, all the other IRU regions, it's not a big thing, but IRU region 1, which is normally Europe and other countries surrounding Europe, they're not allowed to go above 7,200. So not a lot of people know that. So if you want to work DX on 40, especially Europe, you got to be below 7,200. But you're right. The nighttime bands are magical when they're open. 80 meters and 160, not so much in the summer, but in the winter, Greg, those bands are remarkable.
Yeah. And it's interesting. When I first got into digital during COVID, because I hadn't played with it before then, I discovered the 60 meter band. The 60 meter band from California, the DX on that band was phenomenal early in the morning or late at night. It was amazing. I mean, there's some new bands that people don't think about now, that as the other bands begin to close off, you'll start focusing on these other bands. You'll say, wow, 40 is so crowded, I've got to look for something else. Yeah, there's 80, there's a lot of rag chewing there, but 60 becomes an exciting digital band. I mean, it's just like 30 meters for a lot of people. They don't think about it a lot, but the CW guys do and the digital guys do. That's also another good band, maybe during the day. So, I mean, this is the kind of thinking you have to have. You want to avoid the QRM on 20 and 40, the two workhorse bands. Look for these other bands and other modes, Stu.
Yeah, and I know 30 meters. Some countries can even operate SSB there. No, I know the U.S. and Canada cannot.
Right.
I think Australia has SSB privileges there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they do. And 60 meters is I think that's the channelized, but they're just really you guys down south just got a portion opened up to be a little bit more free roaming.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, you're still restricted by power to, I think, 15 watts of ERP or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure of that, but I just run digital, so it's fine.
It's one of the only bands that's kind of in the mainstream bands that have the ERP measurement of power versus just pure power out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I do remember that. But the most important thing to remember is the low bands are going to be your friend during the bottom of the cycle, right? The nighttime in particular, that's going to excel, because what happens at nighttime? You lose the D layer, right? And the D layer is what absorbs all those low frequency signals during the day. And so the D layer is really, by that going away, it's going to provide us this incredible opportunity for not only regional contacts, but as Stu said, for DX contacts as well. And I mentioned during the day, pretty much it's going to be 20 meters, maybe a little bit on 17. But as I recall from the last downturn, because I'm a sideband guy, 20 meters was where I spent most of my time. And 30 meters digital when I wanted to do that. As far as the high bands, patience, my friend, patience. I love 10, 12, and 15. You and I, that's our favorite band all around. But a lot of patience and a lot of targeted openings. And there are going to be things you can do to prepare yourself to be ready on those bands, some tools you can use, because a lot of these bands like Sporadic E is unpredictable. When they're openings, man, the openings are phenomenal, but they're not on a regular basis, right? Now, this time of year, May, June, and July is great for Sporadic E on 6 meters, but also 10 meters and 2 meters, by the way. But, you have to look for those things. You have to plan for those things and be ready when they do open up. So I would say the high bands, you can always try. I'll probably go out and I'll probably, run 5 minutes and call CQ just in case the band may be open based on the MUF that I'm looking at that particular time. But if not, you just go back to the other bands and it works. But they're still there.
Yeah, 6 meter, when 6 meters is open, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Sporadic E. This is the time of year, May, June, July. That's when it peaks.
And 10 meters Sporadic E is good in the winter time too from South America.
People don't realize that. Sporadic E is not just 6, it's also 10 and 2 meters. More rare on 2, but 10, when the Sporadic E openings are on 10 meters, they are amazing. So there are a lot of tools you can use to kind of look for those and be ready for those when they do.
Greg, just for clarification, so the people that are saying, what the heck are you talking about Sporadic E, Greg? Can you give us a very quick Cliff Notes or Cole's Notes version of that?
Well, Sporadic E it's very seasonal. Now, here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's May, June, July at peaks. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's just the opposite. It's around the solstice. And what happens during Sporadic E is that you get this really unusual ionization in this layer that sits between the D layer, which absorbs, and the F layer. And the E layer is typically very porous, but depending on certain conditions during this time of year, especially during the mid-latitudes, the E layer can become much more dense, and which normally, your 10 meter and your 6 meter signals pass through it and sometimes typically go out into space. All of a sudden, the E layer starts refracting high frequency signals. When I say high frequency, I'm talking VHF. Now, VHF is above 10 meters, right? So that's 6 meters and even up to 2 meters. And as it becomes more dense, it creates these clouds, and these clouds come and go. And I call them clouds, but they're not physical clouds, but they come and go and they pop in. And when they pop in, you get this incredible long distance refraction off the cloud around 50 megahertz, all the way up to 2 meters. And you can start making contacts, not just across the continent, but if you've got multiple Sporadic E clouds that appear in a certain line, like across an ocean, you can get some incredible DX as well. And I remember my best Sporadic E contact was a sideband contact with Australia. We were both getting S7, S8, and it was like you're sitting right next to this person on 50 megahertz on the sideband calling frequency. It was amazing. But then the crazy thing about it is it lasted for about 6 minutes, and then all of a sudden, poof, it was gone.
Yeah, when it's there, it's there. When it's gone, it's gone.
And it makes it unpredictable, but that's part of the magic, right? That's why they call it the magic band.
Yeah, there's no rag chew in there. It's a quick contact.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, the quick exchange of some pertinent information and go. So
and go, yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of Spratic E, great Spratic E contacts last around this time, maybe last. Yeah, it was around this time last year because I was doing the VC9 Delta Tango special event, and that was May of last year.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. See, I tell you, this time of year is when it starts. So, be ready for those. And there are tools you can use to kind of find out when those openings happen. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But, earlier, Stu, you mentioned modes. I'm a sideband guy, right? I did pass my 20 words per minute code, but I haven't really used it much over the last 30 years.
You and me both.
I hate to admit it, but I'm going to have to learn. In fact, if you're thinking about learning CW, start now, because it's going to really help you at the bottom end of the cycle, because it's a very efficient mode. Number one, and I remember this is why I got into digital, at least, experimented with it back during COVID. Digital modes will dominate near the bottom of the cycle because it decodes signals below the noise floor. I mean, it's a fantastic mode. I know there are people that don't like it. I understand that, right? But there are a lot of different digital modes, Stu. And I know you've done more than I have. I mean, FT8, FT4 are fun modes, quick contacts. You can at least feel like you're making some progress in terms of getting your QSOs up, or if you're going portable. But there are other digital modes, Stu, and you've talked about a couple, right?
Yeah, there's RTTY, there's a ton of them, yeah. Yeah.
And you can have conversations.
Yeah. What's the one? JS call or something like that, I think it is?
I think something like that. Or yeah. I have to explore those.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's another part of the hobby that you can spend time on to expand your knowledge, expand your experience, and learn more about it. And the downward trend at the base of the cycle will be a great opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And as I mentioned, it's also a great opportunity to learn some CW. And, I may have to work on my CW. We got a couple of years now, because that'd be kind of fun. I mean, I know guys, that love it, and they still get amazing contacts. Marauder, that Moxon inspired antenna design that I put together that you were talking about, that has become a CW guy favorite, because they work around the world with CW on that, because it's so efficient and you've got some good gain. But the CW still is the master mode for a lot of the traditional hams. And so they need to, if you don't do it, it's something to think about over the next 3-4 years to learn. And it's good for your brain too.
I'll be getting a CW skimmer.
Yeah. That's a little cheating, but I know there are guys
and then typing from my keyboard.
I know. I was going to say that. I remember building this Heath kit. Oh gosh, back in the 90s, and it did exactly that. It was a keyboard with a built-in CW generator in it, and it's kind of cheating, to be honest, but it worked really well. And now with the new 7300, it reads CW pretty well.
Yeah, FTX10 does the same, but all the contesters and all the guys that are on expeditions, they're not writing code down. They're using the computer. Yeah.
That's all right. That's part of the process. But as Stu and I both said, SSB sideband will be opportunistic. I mean, I'll still use it, but you got to be more patient, and you got to augment it with some other modes. And another part of SSB that we hinted at is they got a couple of big opportunities when there's contests, and you're a big contest guy. I'm not so much. You can talk to this. But when there's contests, you got guys with big antennas and a lot of power, and they're looking to work anybody. And contest weekends become really popular near the bottom of the cycle, because all the other guys, we can start making contacts again, right, Stu?
And when contests are on, especially the big ones, I don't know what goes on. I have a theory. With all the radio signals transferring through the ionosphere,
I've heard this before.
Propagation comes alive. Comes alive, right? The numbers could be, look at it, the K index is 5, and it shouldn't be working, but you're still hearing all kinds, because I just call it contest propagation.
Yeah. Well, that's probably not scientific, but in any case, that is a phenomenon. And I think it's a lot of it has to do with the fact there's some big antennas out there with lots of power, and these people have great receive arrays, and they can pick up all the weak signals that all of us normal guys are sending from our little humble QTH. So that's right. Contest weekends, but also gray line too. Gray line is huge. Gray line is the twilight time, sunrise to sunset, at those particular times, because the D layer, the absorption layer, which is not your friend, goes away before the F layers do as the twilight hour comes down or the sun is rising. So all of a sudden you lose all that absorption. You still have the F layers, and you can get some great gray line contacts. The ideal is your sunrise contacting someone DX at their sunset.
Correct.
That's the ideal. And so you can go online and figure figure out, and there are these wonderful programs, and we can take a look at these that show you, okay, here's based on your sunrise, here's all the sunsets around the world, and you can start working these stations if they're on, and you can get some amazing DX contacts through.
Even a cluster service like Holy Cluster has the ability to show the gray line. And I know that I just started using Station Master Pro for my my home logging software, and that has that ability too. So you can bring up the map and see where the gray line is. But I mean, we do a lot of 40 meter gray line DX in the wintertime because our sunset lines up with Japan's sunrise.
Perfect. And you can go the other way too. Right.
And perfect. And even in the, I got a funny email that this is a while ago now. I was working, I think I was working the Russian DX contest on 40 meters. Yeah. And my buddy from just outside of Perth, Australia, messages me and says, "Mate, you're 40 over here." I said, "Give me a call. I can work you, you know."
40 over, wow.
But that was perfect gray line, gray line.
That was perfect gray line.
When I was here, it was sunrise in just outside of Perth.
Yeah, so, and you lost your D layer, so you weren't getting absorbed. So you had lots of signal going out, still refracting off the F layers and making that 40 over contact.
And that D layer, it doesn't go away right away, and it doesn't ramp up right away. It doesn't there's not a switch. Okay, D layer on, D layer off. No. It takes some time for it to build up, and it takes some time for it to dissipate. So that's why gray line can be either start the seasoned gray liners know exactly when to turn the radio on and start transmitting.
That's right. Yeah, but the D layer does disappear before the F layers do.
Correct.
And that's what really makes that twilight time or the sunset time.
The F layer in the evening merges into one layer basically.
That's right. Yeah. F1 and F2 during the day, F layer at night. That's right.
And the E layer is pretty much gone.
And the E layer is pretty much gone. That's right. So let's talk about, how are we going to prepare ourselves? What are some of the key advantages that we want to pursue as we start thinking about, the reducing solar cycle? We already mentioned it earlier. Antenna choice, I believe, in my opinion, becomes the most important element for success. Radiation efficiency rules. And folks who have heard my presentations know that my number one priority is radiation efficiency. Most commercial vendors don't talk about it. They talk about great SWR. They talk about all these other things other than radiation efficiency. What that basically means is if I put 100 watts, if I apply 100 watts into my antenna system, what percentage of that is going to be radiated? Now, if you've got a quarter wave vertical with radials on the ground, you're going to be radiating 40 to 45% of your 100 watt. You'll still make contacts. You'll still get a great SWR, but SWR has nothing to do with performance or radiation efficiency.
Well, SWR is just matching the impedance from the transceiver to the antenna. Basically,
people get too excited over it, right? And they got to have it 1.01 to 1. No, you don't. 1.5 or below is fine. But radiation efficiency, for example, the Performer antenna that you and I have talked about, it's 90%. So if you apply 100 watts to your Performer at the feed point, you're going to radiate at least 90 watts. Compare that to a guy who's got 8 radials on the ground radiating 45 watts, and I've got a 3 dB advantage. That is going to make a difference as the cycle goes down, because those 40, 45 watt signals with the radials on the ground are going to have a lower opportunity to be heard than folks that have got a 3 dB advantage with a high efficiency antenna.
One of my friends who doesn't live too far from here sent me a message after I did my 4-wave video, and I said I put three counterpoises on the ground. I didn't work any DX that day. I only worked some US stations. He said, it takes, his quote was 8 ground radials equals 1 radial that's elevated.
Yeah, I would say that's a conservative, because I have found that 2 elevated radials, it takes you about 60 to 70 ground radials to equal 90%.
Wow, that's crazy.
So the bottom line is, all you need is 2 elevated radials, and you got yourself on a quarter wave vertical, and you got yourself high efficiency. So that is more impactful than Stu going out and buying a 500 watt amplifier and putting it through an inefficient antenna. So you can still run 10 watts, 100 watts, but make sure your antenna is efficient. Go ahead.
It's funny that you mentioned the 500 watt amplifier. I have a new Meritron 500 watt amplifier on my desk here.
I know you do.
I think I may have mentioned that to you.
You did.
So I look at your antenna designs, Greg, and I think my plan is to build the Challenger. Yeah, I got the Challenger on my printer here because you got to read the manual, right? a very quick glance, that has a counterpoise on the ground, though.
It does. But Stu, if you listen to some of my presentations, I explain why that's less important than a quarter wave radial, because a quarter wave antenna, where's your current maxima on a quarter wave antenna, Stu?
Well,
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, now you get my theory going here. It's at the basically at the base of the antenna.
The feed point.
Yeah.
The feed point, right? And what radiates, current or voltage?
Current, I do believe.
Attaboy. That's 2 for 2.
Right. I'm a qualified advanced amateur in Canada. Look at that. I just didn't memorize the questions and go.
So as you go through a half wavelength antenna, a resonant antenna, your current maximum is always at the middle. So like in a dipole, that's your current maximum. A quarter wave is just a dipole bent, right? So it's still your quarter wave feed point is your current maximum. You want to keep that as high off the ground as you can, because you don't want it to get capacitively coupled into the ground. Because just think of the feed point as a capacitor, or the radial like a capacitor, and the ground is the other plate. Capacitance is inversely proportional to distance. So as you move those radials and feed point up off the ground, you don't get that capacitive coupling, and that is not your friend, because that's what sucks all that energy into the ground. And if you've got your high current radials laying on the ground, Stu, right near the feed point, is in particular the first third of the radial, you're going to lose so much of that power. You're just going to be heating up ants. Now the difference is, as you look at that same half wave antenna. Now the feed point, let's move it down to off center fed, which is roughly 80% down the line instead of 50. As you go towards the end of the antenna, what's happening? Your voltage is going up, but your current is going down. So by the time you get to an 80% off center fed, or especially 95% end fed half wave, your current levels at the feed point, and hence the counterpoise, is so low that you can just keep your feed point maybe a foot, 2 feet off the ground on a half wave antenna, but your counterpoise can droop down and lay on the ground, and you won't hurt your efficiency at all. In fact,
you're not cooking too many ants with that one.
You're not cooking ants. Yeah. No, on a quarter wave, it's important because of the current. On a half wave, not as important. You can keep it lower to the ground. Yeah, so radiation efficiency, think about that all the time. Now, on top of that, Stu and I have been talking about, the Marauder, which is a Moxon-inspired vertical. In fact, we can show that at the end of the presentation here. But you need some gain, right? Gain helps. In addition to efficiency, gain helps. And, most omnidirectional quarter wave antennas are under 0 dBi, dB relative to an isotropic theoretical antenna. Like the Performer, omnidirectional, is about minus 0.6 dBi in all directions. But when you put the radials at 90 degrees, you get a little bump between the span of the radials to positive plus 0.4 dBi. But during the bottom of the cycle, I would look for any antenna that can give you at least a plus 2 dBi gain. Like the Marauder averages around 2.5, 2.6. That's perfect. That's what you want to get, because you're going to be competing against other folks who are also trying to get on the airwaves under rough conditions. And so that little extra power coupled with high radiation efficiency will give you a fantastic advantage, Stu.
That's right. I mean, I've done many of the parasitic antenna configurations now, and they've all worked good. And even the Marauder I used a couple weeks ago, when the bands were not in the best of shape, I still managed to knock off, a good, respectable number of QSOs given the band condition.
That's right. Yeah, because you got great efficiency and you've got some gain. And some guys even separate their transmit and their receive antenna. I know, for example, have you ever played with a beverage antenna, a receive antenna?
I haven't personally, but I know lots of guys that have them.
I have a beverage receive antenna in my backyard. It's about 5 feet off the ground. It runs along my fence. We live on postage stamps here in Silicon Valley. But so I got this nice little fence, and I run a 202-foot long wire. They call it random, but it's a very specific length. And it works on all the bands. But the noise level is 3 to 4 S units lower than my end-fed half wave that I run here at home. So that's a great. And then one day you can even run these beverage antennas on the ground. BOG, I think they call them, beverage on ground. One time it was really by accident. I had this 25-foot vertical and I was at a park, about a year and a half ago. And for some reason, the bands were very noisy that day, but I was still making, really good contacts with it. Well, the wind came by and it blew it over, right? And so then I had this antenna laying on the ground. I didn't notice it right away, but all of a sudden I noticed all the noise went away. I was still hearing contact. The signal to noise was amazing because this antenna was laying on the ground. Now, you don't want to transmit that way, but I realized that was my accidental beverage antenna on the ground, Stu.
No, if it works, right?
I know. It's pretty cool.
Well, especially when you got high static environments, especially in the lower bands, 80 and 40, that's so important.
I was just going to make that point, and this becomes more significant because as more people get on 40, well, not so much 60 because that's digital, but 40 and 80 meters during the winter months and now during the low end of the cycle, there's a lot more noise. 160, I don't know. I made a few contacts on 160, but the noise there is horrific. But some guys, there are some purists who love it. But 40 and 80, it really helps a lot to have potentially consider a separate receive antenna. And some guys even create receive arrays. So you get some amplified receive gain. Now, you wouldn't transmit on them, but you'd keep it as a separate receive array and get some better receive coverage to hear some of the weaker state.
Probably not a bad idea if you got some space, for sure.
If you got some space, yeah, it does. All right, so time of day. Stu, we talked about this earlier. We already talked about gray line, how that's important, local sunrise to sunset or vice versa. That makes a difference. Nighttime is big. We talked about that. The D layer absorption goes away. That's really important. Daytime, you got to be selective, but if you use the right tools and you get on the band at the right place and you work around the QRM, you got to narrow your receive filter a little bit. But if you do it, you can still do so effectively. But you're right. It does shift more towards the twilight hours and towards the nighttime bands, Stu.
And don't forget, and not on Greg's slide here too, but long path propagation differs very much from short path propagation. So you may not be able to talk to somebody. Now, you're not going to talk California to New York on long path.
Right.
But if you're working Australia or Asia or places like that, if you turn your antenna 180 degrees the opposite direction, now if you can do that, then you may have better. I worked Ravi Sugar 79 Victor Uniform, big station in the Seychelles. I've always worked them on short path. I think I worked them on all the bands now. The other day he checked into the Kilo Echo 5 Echo long path morning DX net. And I just happened to be pointing long path, and I called him and I said, Ravi, are you long path or short path right now? He says, I'm working long path. I said, well, we got our first long path QSO.
Very cool.
In my place in the Seychelles. So sometimes when short path is closed, long path is open. Now, not everybody's going to have the luxury of that. But, if you're considering these parasitic arrays, you can just reorientate the antenna, bring the reflector around and change the reflector director elements around. And now you got it pointing 180 degrees the other direction.
That's right. And what was that website that you used? Because I'm not familiar with that.
Holy Cluster. You have to Google it. It's part of the Israeli Amateur Radio Society. Holy Cluster. Yeah, after Holy Land, Holy Cluster. And,
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the Station Master Pro logging software that I recently switched to for my home logging does both short path and, because one of the things I wanted was a logging program that could show me long path and short path. And the azimuth for them, right? Without me having to figure it out in my head. I mean, 180 degrees is not difficult to figure out, right? You can look at the map and okay.
Yeah.
But there was that and the integration with Club Log I wanted, and that provided that, both of them. So that is nice if you're able to put in the log, okay, I worked your long path, and just click a button instead of what did I work you that day, right? So just again, some people that run just a simple vertical or end-fed half wave or even a dipole may not have that. But if you have a beam, a hex beam, or Yagi, considering changing that direction 180 degrees, and you'll be surprised what you can hear.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I hadn't thought of long path because I haven't really played with it that much. I've only gotten it by accident sometimes, but it is something to consider. In fact, you talked about the Holy Cluster. All of a sudden now, technology and tools are really going to become even more significant. In fact, it should become part of your daily routine, which we'll talk about. But there's a lot of propagation maps and prediction tools that are easily online. They're all free. Some of my favorites for MUF, maximum usable frequency, dxview.org. I love that. I love to go to SolarHam, check the A and the K indexes on a solarham.com. I think it's Canadian that runs that site. Solar.whiskey5 Mike Whiskey is another cool site.com that gives you updates on the bands. And space weather from NASA is one of the ones I always go to. I can show these. I have them queued up on my laptop if you want to look at these when we're all done.
Yeah, sure we can. But there's another tool I just learned about this week, hamdash.com.
Ham-1word.com?
Hamdash.com.
Okay.
And they have a very good, exceptionally done AI. Is it AI propagation prediction?
Oh,
so you go in
very cool.
It takes all the information that's publicly available, and it does this review or report on, okay, here's what should work from your grid square.
Oh, I got to check this out.
Yeah.
Hamdash.com.
Yeah. Yep.
Very cool. Is it free?
I believe it is. I use it all the time, and I haven't given my credit card to him. So
good.
Yeah.
You know, hams, we're all so frugal. We don't want to pay.
Well, you know, we want to pay money for stuff that serves us well.
Yeah, that's right. We're very select. Yeah. So I think it's a really good suggestion, Hamdash. I got to check that out. Plus the other ones that I mentioned. We talked about this earlier, the DX clusters and the spotting networks. Those become really important because you can then determine where all the live activity, where the stations are making contacts and on what bands and what time of the day. So, I mean, it's a fantastic way, and it's a good time now to start learning about these tools. So as the cycle goes down, you can become much more prepared to jump on these opportunities. And also, of course, the SDRs and the band adapters. I mean, I'm constantly in my ICOM 7300 looking at the entire band, looking for where the activity is, and you got to run to it. And a lot of times, you know, you're competing against many others in a big pileup. You want to avoid those, but sometimes you get some people calling CQ and jump on it. That's your opportunity. You got to really be active. You got to be nimble. You got to make sure things happen best for you.
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, those DX expeditions that are out there, sometimes they can be really lonely because they're calling and nobody's answering them.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you know, whenever you think of those, you think of, oh, these massive pileups I'll never get through. I have found these guys who just happen to be going through a lull, you know, maybe because it's someone else's dinner time in Europe or something like that. It's kind of a lull. And so you can jump on these. And so, you know, you might as well at least try. Don't be intimidated by it. At least give it a try.
Yep.
But as we mentioned this also earlier, is that as you get into this, you got to develop some kind of personal daily routine where you check the solar conditions, you check the MUF maps, you check the clusters, you know, do it early in the morning so you kind of get a sense of what's going on in the ham radio world on that particular day. And also, don't be stuck up on what band you use. Just because you and I love 15 meters and we're going to say, I'm going to make sure this thing works and it doesn't work, you know, be nimble, look for other bands. Yeah, 20 meter and 40 meter, the workhorse bands are going to be crowded, but that's okay. There's going to be some spots, as Stu mentioned, that you can find that may be a bit quieter. If you don't hear any stations, call CQ, see what happens. It's amazing how many times, oh, the band seems quiet. I start calling CQ. Bingo. I get 2 or 3 contacts. It's fantastic. So call CQ with intent, Stu. You know, just don't sit back and assume you're going to be contacted by others. You call CQ, but do so with intent.
And one other tip, don't be afraid to spot yourself on the clusters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, just, you know, some people will frown upon that. Usually the same people that complain about digital. But go ahead and spot yourself. Just don't do it every minute, but, you know, do it.
Yeah, you don't want to do it every minute.
Do it once or twice. Usually what will happen, you start making a bunch of contacts, and then people will just start spotting you anyway. So
I was just going to say that. Well, it's just like in POTA, right? You know, if you can get your first spot out there, other people will be kind enough to respot you, and then things move on. Same thing happens on the cluster. I mean, I'm sure you've been on POTA where some hunter says, I'll put you on the cluster. And you say, great. Then all of a sudden, boom, you get all these contacts from the cluster. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you got to work on you got to have a very adaptive strategy. And we talk about portable, right? So all of this applies to all QTH and portable, but specifically portable. And let's talk about POTA, because, you know, I've done over 1,000 activations. I'm a POTA geek, and I know you are too. You got to reset your expectations a little bit, right? It's a different kind of POTA fun, right? I'm so used to going on to POTA like you and getting pileups and making, you know, well over 100 contacts, sideband contacts. I know you make 500, but some of us, the rest of the world, we make 100 and we're happy, right? That's pretty cool. But you got to reset that. So instead of having hundreds of contacts, you may have dozens. I remember setting goals to say, wow, if I can hit 50 today, it's going to be a great POTA day. And it's still a great POTA day because you're outside having fun, getting fresh air.
I was just thinking that, yeah, you're outside enjoying nature.
Exactly right. But, well, with technology, of course.
Yeah.
But, reset those expectations. As far as DX, I'm used to, especially on 10, 15 meters, getting lots of DX during POTA, especially here on the West Coast, working all over Asia and South America. You won't get as many of those. You'll get some, but you won't get as many of those. Be happy. You'll get a lot more regional contacts because maybe you'll be on lower bands. Maybe you'll try 40 meters during the day because the D layer isn't as absorbing as it once was the day before. But, you'll get more regional contacts, and that's okay. I've got a PERformer NVIS antenna with a high angle radiation. I'm going to use that because you get some high angle radiation during the low end of the cycle that you don't get ordinarily, and you can make some good regional contacts. And don't forget about VHF and UHF. If you want to activate a park, don't forget that you can also, don't use a repeater, but you can go on the FM or the sideband calling frequencies on those bands. I do that all the time to augment my HF contacts to get, at least my 10, sometimes more. There's a lot of guys on VHF, and there will be a lot of people hanging out on VHF. Let me tell you, at the bottom of the band, VHF and the repeaters are crowded, but especially on the calling frequencies, there'll be a lot of guys monitoring those, Stu, trying to get some VHF contacts at the bottom of the cycle. So use that when you're on POTA.
And satellite too. That's another thing, another area to consider with the VHF spectrum is satellite.
Absolutely. Satellite. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So do we have time to talk about a couple of antennas?
We have all the time in the world.
Oh, you're so easy. I tell you, I was thinking about, from KJ6ER Designs. These are all free designs. Just go to my website, kj6er.net, which I did not have the last time you and I talked, Stu.
It's brand spanking new.
It's brand spanking new. Yeah. kj6er.net. I've been having so many people ask me, please create a website with all your free designs on it, or a place where I can sign up on for your monthly Antenna Geeks email list. And so I finally got around to creating it thanks to my son. He helped me with that one. Anyway, so 3 antennas that you want to consider, and these are 3 of quite a few. We talked about the PERformer. The PERformer is this elevated quarter wave vertical, very efficient, 90%. It's got a really good takeoff angle around 24 degrees. It can be omnidirectional, like I said, minus 0.5 dBi in all directions, or you can get a little bit of gain with 2 radials up between the span of the radials, about 0.4 dBi. But what you and I do, and this is what I recommend, is you put these radials horizontal and then put a second PERformer about a quarter wavelength away, and you can make it a reflector, which is what you're supposed to do, and according to my PDF. But Stu also created a director, and you still had great success with it, you told me, Stu.
Yeah, it worked out good. Worked out really good that day.
Yeah, and you get like about 2.5 dB. You get about a 3 dB gain over a single PERformer when you use 2 PERformers. So start thinking about building that second PERformer or buying one on Etsy. You can have a second PERformer and give yourself great directional focused gain on all the bands, including 40 meters.
Absolutely.
Something to consider.
Yeah.
Stu talked about the Marauder. This is, I just introduced this in February, this design in February of 2026. This is becoming one of my fastest downloaded antenna designs because I always loved the Moxon antenna. I think the Moxon was really, really clever design, came out in the 80s. But one of the things I wanted to do, one is I wanted to make it vertical. So because I like vertical radiation in this particular case, but I also wanted to make it, instead of being a dipole center fed Moxon, I made it an end-fed Moxon. So if you look at the design of the antenna, you have a radiator, which is basically using part of this whip, and a linked cross wire at the top. And you can see I have a non-conducting segment there. So that becomes your folded radiator, your folded end-fed half-wave radiator. And then with that non-conducting segment, I have the second whip and another cross wire that goes along the bottom with another non-conducting segment there. And that becomes your folded reflector. So you get this beautiful gain about between 3 and 4 dBi average, very directional, very good front to back. So to cut out some of that noise behind you, and it becomes a really good, highly efficient, well over, I think about 85% efficient antenna that's also very directional with gain, Stu.
And just happen to have 2 of those 56-to-1 unends from myantennas.com sitting here in the shack. And what a perfect use for them.
It is. Well, you only need one. You only need one because the reflector is parasitic.
That's correct.
Yes.
But I had 2. I had 2.
Of course you do, Stu.
And I have 2 other ones on the tower that I'm taking down this summer that are high powered ones. So I'm looking forward to maybe taking this design out with a little bit of oomph behind it.
I'm sure you are. I know you've got some portable amplifiers and some big batteries.
Well, I just found out my friend, I don't know if you ever met Keith, AC1 Radio Hotel.
No.
He runs 600 watts in the mornings. He gets on 40 meters, and he sounds beautiful up here.
I'm sure
he does. He has that new, I can't remember which one it is. It's just a little box with 600 watts it puts out.
Well, if you notice, there's a lot of companies now beginning to introduce amplifiers, and it's because they know what's happening with the cycle.
Yeah.
So they want you to consider power. And I would consider power, but only after you focus on radiation efficiency with a gain antenna.
Of course, yes.
Then you can start thinking about power. Don't do power up front. It's not worth it, my friend. This is the last antenna I was going to mention as a teaser because it's a future design that's coming out in the second half of 2026. I love taking classic antenna book designs and refining them, bringing them up to date and making them portable and simple. One of my favorite old school antennas is called the half square. And you and I talked about this the last time.
We did, yeah.
The half square is not a quarter wave antenna. It's not a half wave antenna.
A full wave.
It's a full wave antenna. And in theory, it's a half a square, the upper half of a square, roughly a quarter wave on one side, a half wave along the top, and a quarter wave down the other side. And I just took the same principle that I did with my Marauder, using 2 whips to create this half square antenna. And the beauty of the half square antenna now, it only goes down to 20 meters, but you can, and I have to experiment with this. You can run this with a parasitic, a second half square in front of it. You already get 2.5 dB gain, like a dipole, bidirectional through the loop at a very low takeoff angle, around 20 degrees. But if you can run it as a second parasitic and get about 5 dB gain at an even lower angle of radiation and a very excellent front to side ratio, so you kind of eliminate some of those other signals you're not interested in. So I think what's going to happen, again, this is another highly efficient antenna, gain antenna. You can put power into it if you want, but it's going to give you an advantage when the bands go down. Something to consider. So second half of the year, I'll be sharing this design. So get on my Antenna Geeks list and you'll be the first to see it.
You'll be running power through that LDG 9-to-1 on it.
That's rated 200 watts.
That's right.
I wouldn't use that 9-to-1, but there's some 1,500 9-to-1s you can buy on Palomar and other companies if you want to run power. Most of us don't.
I have a 1,500 watt coming from my new 80 meter dipole I'm putting up. So from Palomar, So I'm looking forward.
Okay.
It should be here any day now.
I love it. Well, LDG makes great general purpose. They're only rated 200 watts. If you're going to run 100, that's fine. But if you want to run some extra juice like Stu do, or just want some extra efficiency, get the Palomar, the 1,500, even the 500. They got 500 watt variations. So the Palomar is excellent quality, and I've used a lot of those. In fact, I use those all the time now when I go portable.
Yeah, great, good equipment and good advice. I'm looking forward to getting the beta version of the hammer design.
Yeah, you're on the beta list. Yeah, I do have beta test.
So I can go and test it out.
Yeah, I want you to test it out and make a video. But I do have a beta testing list. So if you want to get on that, just send me an email. Go to my website.
I hope everybody learned something today as much as we had fun talking about it.
Yeah,
I think Greg has unofficially volunteered to be a regular spot on the show here.
Sure.
He has some good insights, and we just like to chat.
Yeah. So. Well, it all started when Stu and I first met online a couple years ago, and all of a sudden, you're a short QSO guy. I mean, it's kind of built in. I like to chit chat a little bit with my POTA hunters, but I figured out how to get you to chat. Talk about some beer.
Beer. That's good.
And I get him to chat.
Beer and cigars. So there you go. If you want to learn more about Greg's antenna designs, kj60r.net is the website.
And they're always free. They're always free.
Everything's free. And you can elect, if you wish, to purchase the antennas. And Bob, who makes them, does a great job.
Bob Johansson on Etsy, he hand makes these. He makes them better than I make my own. I mean, he does a beautiful job. He sold over 220 products, all 5-star reviews.
Yeah, he does a really good job.
And he's a very supportive. He replies to emails as well instantly. So it's an option. If you don't have the time or the energy to build your own, you can buy one handmade on Etsy.
And that's how I started, but now I've got a few extra moments, and the sun is shining now. You can see the sun coming in the wind in the shack here. I got the garage door open in the shack. Archie's passed out on the carpet within the sunlight.
Archie, your dog, is for those of you that don't know.
Yeah, basically just sunbathing himself on the ground there. And now that the nice weather's here, my projects every once a week. I build a project and I take it out on the weekend. So my POTAs now are only once a week.
Yeah, mine too.
Because I just like to go, I'll probably go on a I don't know. I look at the weather now and go, okay, it's gonna be sunny this day. That's the day I'm going. And we don't have other appointments and stuff. But as you get older, you get things. Things just happen. You can't. Yeah. When we were gung ho and just getting started, it was almost every day.
Yeah, I know.
Priorities in life change.
Priorities change, but it's just like with the solar cycle, we have to be adaptable. In California, I adapted. I mean, the weather's basically boring. It's 75 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny every single day for 10 months. That's kind of boring, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. You should have some. You need to have some snow coming in there. We had snow. Greg, we had snow last night.
No, you didn't.
We had a nor'easter come up the coast.
That's crazy.
The river at the base of my property. Now we're 50 meters above the river, so we're not no flood risk. But the river is spilled over the banks at the bottom of the property.
That's crazy.
And it rained and rained and rained like crazy yesterday. And this morning I woke up and there was just a thin layer of snow on everything. So
I can't believe that. On May 4th.
May the 4th be with you, right? That's
Star Wars Day.
Anyway, I'm Stuart, Victor Echo 9, Charlie Foxtrot. Don't forget to go to kj6er.net. Sign up for Greg's list. Greg, hey, thanks for sharing all this great insight with our community today.
My pleasure, Stu. You're a great guy to chat with.
One more time, what's the website again?
Oh, I think it's kj6er.net.
There you go. 73, everyone. We'll see you guys in the next video.
73.